Hey everybody, my name is Pendarvis Harshaw. I am the host of a podcast for Pops from Dads Evoking Change, which is a nonprofit that specializes in helping men navigate the legal family system and family court. I am here in Stay Different Studios in downtown Oakland. Very happy to be joined by Gerald Chambers. Gerald is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're going to discuss his work as well as some of the resources that he can lend to you all to help you navigate family court. Gerald, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited because I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. Let's start from the top. Licensed family marriage therapist. What does your work entail?
Mostly I work with individuals, families, couples, children, improving the quality of their lives. People typically call me needing some help, most of the time with relationships of some sort, often substance abuse issues, different things going on in their life that they would need help with.
Gotcha. Okay. And the focus of your work, do you have a specific area of focus?
I spend most of my time working on intimate partner violence, relationships in general, and substance abuse issues.
What does a common day look like?
I'll wake up, I'll walk down a flight of stairs to my office, and I'll take a couple of inquiries. I'll have maybe a couple of clients a day. And I'm an online provider, so I work with clients over the internet. And so I have a couple of clients, write some notes, maybe do some marketing stuff, emails, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. And when somebody reaches out to you, they're saying, hey, I'm having trouble with my family, with my relationship, and can you guide me? What kind of resources do you normally give them?
Well, I'm a marriage and family therapist, so I typically work with content of the mind and previous relationships. That's what I'm usually working with. A social worker would do that and probably use resources in the community too to help people get better. But I typically am providing a talk therapy. Gotcha. I don't prescribe any medication or anything like that.
Content of the mind, what does that mean?
Thoughts and feelings. How the meaning that we make of things that happen in our life, how we see things. We typically have a problem. Most people typically have problems with perspective and proportion, how we see things and how big we make them based on previous experience.
Gotcha. It's that old thing about objects in the mirror may appear closer, far.
Yeah.
Okay. And so talking somebody through that might mean what?
Well, just helping them understand their own narrative, help going back through their relationships, experiences that they've had, particularly trauma, and what that meant to them. Not if we have one problem, we have two. We have the problem, and then we have what we think about the problem. So I'm going through that sort of thing, providing a safe space for them to talk about that.
Is this a matter of if you don't understand your history, then you're bound to repeat it?
Yeah. But some people, they may understand their history and still do it anyway because they just don't know how to do anything different. They know their history, they know what they've been through, but they don't know how to deal with what they've been through sometimes.
So you reach that point where you talk through somebody's history, give a certain understanding, and then you have to give advice for how to move forward, correct?
Well, advice isn't that helpful because advice is more about me than it is the client. So what I'm really trying to do is figure out what they do well and help them continue doing the stuff that they do well and help them become aware of what's not working so well and steer away from that.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any specific examples of times where your approach has worked and aided somebody on their path?
Well, most of the clients that come in, benefit from having someone hear them out, and they'll report things like I'm feeling better, or my relationship is improving, or I've been able to stop using a substance, or I'm interested in continuing living a lifestyle that is drug and alcohol free. So those are the kinds of things. And then I'll see people, I'm in the community, so I sometimes see people that I work with in various areas. And it's not always good because sometimes people don't do well, but then other times people do well.
I'm curious, I know that resources such as yourself are people who are just looking to do benevolent work sometimes have trouble reaching their audience. What's your way of engaging with folks who need the assistance?
Well, that's the tough thing about being a psychotherapist and being a therapist in private practice. If you don't market, you don't eat. So that's a big question. That's a challenging thing for most therapists. So if you do agency work, the agency does the marketing for you and draws the clients in. But if you do your own work, then you got to write, blog, vlog, podcast, advertise, that sort of thing to get clients.
Get yourself out there.
Yeah.
From the other end of the tunnel, for people who need the resources, how do you encourage them to get off the couch, get off the schneid, and just like reach out to you?
Well, I just work in different areas with different groups. So I have my private practice. I work with the drug treatment agency, and then I work with Alameda County, the Fatherhood Initiative. And through those channels, I meet more people and they find out about me and find out about other resources.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll get into some of the resources that you have worked with, some of the groups a little bit later. But this podcast specifically, at the heart of it is giving people tools to navigate the family court system. And so I'm wondering, how does your work tie into that?
Well, it does. In some ways it does, in that men will come to me experiencing a conflict with their partner. So the one thing I want to help them do is minimize that conflict, manage that conflict. I'm not really giving that much advice about how to deal with the court and all that, because that's not really my area. My area is how to manage the conflict that you're in with your partner,
right? And
why that's in your best interest to manage your own behavior when you have a difference of opinion with the person you're involved with.
So, but even before you get to dealing with the court, let's deal with the people aspect of it, and specifically the interpersonal aspects of it.
Because it's almost like going to the doctor. If you go to the doctor and with a lump, that lump has been growing for probably 10 years before you even saw a doctor. By that time, it might be too late for them to even do anything about it. So I'm more concerned with prevention, because remember, I'm working in the area of DV. So once the police and authorities get involved, the person could be dead, or they could have real serious consequences. So what I want to try to do is get to people early enough, where possible, to prevent that from happening.
Are there telltale signs that that lump is growing early on?
Well, yeah. I think one of the things is substance use. Like, substance use doesn't mean that a person is going to be violent, but substance use almost always means that a person is in pain. And if we can figure out what they're in pain over and reduce that pain, a lot of times the substance use will go away. And what most people are in pain about are experiencing trauma over are adverse childhood experiences, neglect, sexual abuse or assault, poverty, not having a father in the house, not knowing who your mother is, that sort of stuff.
Early childhood trauma and not having dealt with those scars while still trying to go out and love someone else.
Yeah. Everybody's trying to basically just doing the best they can with the wounds that they have. And one thing about trauma is, one of the first things we want to do is get up and move. And so we can do that without really understanding how we're hurt or how we might go on to continue to hurt ourselves or hurt someone else. So that's what I want to try to make conscious.
It brings to mind two things. One, it's kind of surface, but it's a tweet. It's like there's a lot of pain behind those backwoods and black backwoods and bottles. And I'm thinking about how, it's repetitious to every Friday night, smoke, drink with our friends. And it's habitual. It's something that I know I've seen in my circles and I've done since 14, 15, and I'm wondering how much childhood trauma pours into that habitual action.
Well, I would just say that people with high, what we call ACE scores, the ACE questionnaire, adverse childhood experiences, there's 10 questions that we typically ask people. If you have a high ACE score, it can shorten your lifespan. And we really don't see real serious addiction in people that have not had severe childhood trauma. People will dabble in drugs, use drugs, and not progress into real serious addiction. I mean, homelessness. I'm talking about abscesses on the arm, the other kind of physical problems. Most of the time when we see that kind of seriousness, if we look look well enough, we'll find early childhood trauma.
Can you have real love when you are really addicted to substances?
Well, yeah, recovery is possible. So sure, that's maybe the only thing that can cure it, right? Is figuring out how to love yourself, figuring out how to love another person. Keep in mind that human beings are different than other animals. When we feel overwhelmed, when we feel stressed, we don't burrow holes and we don't climb trees as a first a choice. We want to turn to each other. And if we can't turn to each other, we typically turn on each other. And that is kind of one of the reasons why we have problems in our relationships, is because previous trauma keeps us from turning to and using a relationship appropriately. We don't trust. We're not able to turn to anyone. So we end up turning to a substance. Who wouldn't? You don't feel good, so you want to feel better. So in a way, it's also spiritual in nature, the drive to feel different, to transcend your experience. But what we do is we do the right thing in the wrong place, and the drugs take off. The Chinese say the man takes a drink takes a drink takes a man, and it's pretty true.
I'm sure there's so many sayings. It's bringing to mind so many sayings right now. Like in my head, I'm hearing like "Kill Scott Heron, home is where the hatred is," and there's an artist by the name of Big Crit where he's like, "How can I love somebody else when I abuse myself daily?" And yeah, there's so many different lines that speak to this mindset. Yeah. But you reference animals, and in our previous conversation, you said that you often speak at UC Berkeley, and you speak specifically about this topic in reference to animalistic nature within humans. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things I talk about is that human beings are born prematurely.
What does that mean?
You know, that we don't hit the ground ready to go.
Like a giraffe.
Yeah,
right?
a cow or a horse can forage for food within an hour, but a human being can't do that. And our systems don't come online for another 20 years. We're fully developed 20 years later, right? And so the attachment between the infant and the caregiver, infant mother, infant father, is critical. Any disruption in that relationship changes the personality. Mm-hmm. And so that is a form of trauma. And so that was one of the things that was never really addressed in this country about chattel slavery. That what made chattel slavery so difficult to deal with is we were ripped apart. No other groups went through that. The slavery existed in other places in the world, but American slavery was different in that sense. We could move people from continents by that time, and then the whole object of it was to produce labor that could be moved around the country and sold. And so that created a particular type of injury in African Americans that went through that. And that injury can be passed down.
I hadn't thought of it in that context. And then beyond that, it kind of blew my mind that I started thinking about that's why it's so important to be around both for the young. I have a child, young daughter. Be around for the early stages in life as well as through early adulthood as well.
Oh, sure.
As she's trying to leave the nest.
Sure. Your attention to your daughter is similar to sunlight to a plant. Mm. Your attention is very meaningful. That's your absolute superpower, where you place your attention. That's why so many people are trying to steal it.
It's poetic. But that's tough given our society where I have to lend my attention to my work, to socializing, to whatever, to me having a life.
Right. But in those relationships that you care about, you have to give them some quality attention sometime. Not all the time, but sometime. And the more quality attention you can give them, the better that relationship is going to be.
That makes perfect sense. And how can you give quality attention if your attention is in substances? Right.
Or the bigger problem is you're only as good in relationships as the relationships you've been in. So if you didn't get quality attention as a child, it's going to be hard for you to know what you need to do in a relationship going forward.
That's interesting, because one of the things that I often run into is that being a father, a present father, and my father not being present, when shit hits the fan, I'm like, well, at least I'm here.
Yeah.
When I'm not feeling up to beat, when I'm not 100% A+ dad, I'm like, well, at least I'm here. I'm present. Yeah. And it's still not my full attention. So I'm still lacking, but I'm comparing it to what I didn't have.
And you don't have to be a perfect parent. You have to be a good enough parent. So the fact that you're there and trying means a lot. Yeah. And so could you improve it? Sure. Yeah. But it's just if you have the willingness and you talk to the right people and learn how to improve, you can.
It's an exercise. It's a muscle, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah. On a similar note, you mentioned, back to the conversations that you have at UC Berkeley when you do these talks, there's 2 different types of humans, reptilian and mammals.
Oh. So that comes from John Gottman and Neil Jacobson, some researchers out of Washington. And they wrote this book called When Men Batter Women. And in it, they put together these terms, pit bull and cobra. And they were talking about types of men that batter women and a typology. And there's numerous typologies. These are 2. I like these because they're kind of simple to think about. So we're mammals, warm-blooded. We care for each other. We have live birth. We'll give our lives for our offspring. Reptiles, many of them are cannibals, no empathy. If you throw a stick for a dog will go chase it because it has a special part of the brain that is responsible for that, for play. Reptiles don't have that. And so they respond differently. So these guys looked at the types of men that were battering women, and they were able to set up a laboratory where they brought couples in and put them on heart monitors and blood pressure monitors, and they had them engage in conflict, and they could determine that there was one set of men who actually got calmer as they attacked a woman verbally or psychologically. And they labeled that group cobra, because cobras are cool and indifferent. And then the other type that they labeled a pit bull, and they figured that because pit bulls bite out of fear and they latch on and won't let go. So looking at these 2 types of spousal abusers, they coined those 2 terms. And then so I look at it, the guys that come in basically in those 2 ways. Like, does he have empathy or does he not have empathy? The approach with each of those will be different. Guys that don't have empathy are harder to work with because they are criminal. They basically are criminal types, not afraid of the law. If you got a restraining order, they don't really care about it. And and they'll be more violent toward their partner, probably have what we call a dual diagnosis, some other kind of mental disorder, probably have a substance abuse problem. They would be practicing what I consider mind over matter. I don't mind, you don't matter. They would be more likely to try to pimp their partner, exploit their partner, that sort of thing. That pit bull, on the other hand, is battering out of fear, probably only fighting his partner, probably never having any assaults outside of the household. A hero type, like a preacher or a ball player that never got in trouble, and then you hear that he jacked up his old lady, right? So that type of person, they'd be more likely to latch onto a relationship, and the loss of status would make them want to lose it. You know, they've got this image that they're maintaining. They both are dangerous, both can kill, but they're just different. Their motivations are different. Their backgrounds are different. And these are just typologies. So a person can be a little bit of both and a little bit of the other. So I don't want to like cast anybody. Don't go home and start diagnosing
which
folks.
one are you?
Yeah. Don't do that. Yeah. But that pit bull will latch on, as the name implies, and not want to let go. And so I just kind of use that to think about it. And then as I think about society, we just had basically a president that lacked empathy, right? And we see the problems that can create in relationships and in power positions.
Is there a common cure for either of the types?
Well, if you don't have empathy, a way to approach it is to frame the session in terms of the person's interests, like their best interest. It's in your best interest, because he's not going to really respond to like rules and laws and that kind of stuff. But if he's in trouble about something, if his security and safety are in danger, then he'll make a change. Right? Now, the person that is acting like a pit bull, probably getting arrested for most of them will change their behavior, because they're not criminal types. They're battering out of fear that she's going to lose, dependency, They might be talking a good game at the house, but when she tries to lose, they attack because their sense of self is being destroyed, they think, by her leaving. So they're just two different types. Probably the best thing with people without empathy is to put them all in the same group together so they can offend each other and just be together. Because they'll be the ones that would come into a group if you can get them into a group. Because remember, they're catch me if you can.
Right.
I don't care. But if you can get them into a group, they'd be the ones to not like the environment because it's emotional. We're going to be talking about feelings, and they don't respond that way. And they can be very clever and very, very. They can be the type of people that you think you have a alignment with. You think they're doing what they need to do, and they're just conning you.
Just to get out of the predicament that they don't want to be in. But it seems like both instances, types, again, broad generalizations, but appealing to the self. It's self-survival.
Yeah,
is a
self-interest.
Self-interest.
Self-interest for the person that doesn't have a lot of empathy, and then just showing the pit bull how to be different can be very helpful. And plus he's got the law on him. He doesn't want. He's never been arrested. He's never been in any kind of trouble, so he's more likely to behave differently given the opportunity.
Any advice for men out there trying to grow beyond that self-interest worldview?
Yeah, connect with other men. Get involved in some activity that puts you in close proximity to other men that are trying to do what you are trying to do. If you're trying to get off drugs, get together with other men that are trying to get off drugs. Those situations exist. If you want to be a better parent, get together with other men who are trying to be better parents. Again, we turn to each other. We learn, but primarily from each other. And so change is possible. I can't say if you're either one of those types of people that you can't change. I can't say that. But just get involved you have to want to change, and you have to put yourself in situations that allow you to change.
That makes perfect sense, but also I know it's easier to say than do.
Yeah.
I imagine if you're, again, the individual, the kind of lone wolf, then asking them to turn to a group or suggesting that.
Well, one of the other barriers, the numerous barriers, a person might have mental illness to a greater degree. A person might have a substance use problem. A person might, shame itself will keep a person from, because as we try to talk about those areas, what do you want a person to be in therapy? Well, vulnerable, open, willing. Men typically hide that kind of stuff. We don't want to broadcast vulnerability. We don't want to broadcast that we're having a problem. We want to try to impress other men, so the shame can prevent you from seeking help. And so we want to reduce that if we can.
What's the best way to reduce shame?
Talking to men privately.
Privately, not on the stage.
Yeah, like sometimes people call me for couples therapy. And if the man hasn't had any therapy before, I don't recommend couples therapy as a beginning point.
Whoa.
Because just like if I was trying to teach you how to drive, I wouldn't take you to the freeway first.
Yeah.
Right? Let's start just you. Because you might, like most couples need to have more conflict, not less conflict. So we need to talk about the stuff that's really bothering us, and we need to make it safe enough for men. Men will talk if they can.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't feel like they can really say what they need to say, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Therapy is so that you can really talk about why you're upset with a person or what's really bothering you. That could be quite triggering to your partner.
So you need the preliminary course at first to work on self before you even step into this arena.
Yeah.
Where you get deeper.
There's a sequence that I like to use. The sequence wouldn't be to start you in a couples therapy first with your partner who you may have done something to that's triggering her, and then you get there and then you can't talk about that.
Tighten up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I've tried individual therapy before. Did it for 6 months and up and down results. But I knew that I needed to do that before I even thought of couples therapy. So it's comforting to know that I was on the right path.
Yeah.
And I need to fire that thing back up again.
And I'll say men do quite well in therapy. There's this thing that men don't. It's hard to get men to therapy, but once men come into therapy, they do quite well.
Why does they do well once in there?
Because I think, like I know in my case, I discovered that I had an emotional life that I needed to take responsibility for. And I always wanted to, I just didn't know how.
Emotional life?
Yeah, that I have thoughts and feelings. And I don't have to be the tough guy. I don't have to be, I can show some vulnerability. I can talk about what has happened to me. I can, in a situation where you can reduce my shame, I'll talk about what's going on with me. And then you're able to help me.
But you have to let down that barrier. That I'm sure there's some ego in there too, right?
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
Of course.
It's like it smells like ego is going on right now.
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
So keep in mind, right, if we think about evolution a little bit, now we think about men being hunters and women being gatherers.
Right.
Okay, so the women would be back at the base camp watching children, gathering nuts, berries, seeds, fruit. We'd live off 80% of what they gathered. They would need to talk, to coordinate. We're hunters. If you make too much noise, you're going to scare off the game.
Or get killed.
Right. So we don't talk that much.
Yeah.
Right. And just in general, this broad generalization.
Yeah.
Just bear with me. But
it's been a long time since I've hunted. My family lineage.
But we don't really talk that much about, especially not feelings.
Yeah.
We typically try to hide that. We don't want to broadcast that we feel. And in fact, anger, it can be considered a used for image control. I feel guilty. I feel ashamed. I get angry. We get points on the street for being angry or crazy.
But not for being emotional,
Right.
which we really are.
Right.
But the anger is a good mask. So
Right.
And anger is a selling point. Like you could be an athlete, an entertainer, be angry your whole life, but really you just have a childhood scar to deal with.
Yeah, and under that, anger secondary, under that, there's some guilt, some shame, some pain that I'm dealing with that I need to interrogate, find out about.
Interesting. Okay. I want to talk about potential pitfalls. Somebody's watching this right now and they want to get out there, get into counseling, get some things straight. What are some things to be wary of?
Well, like anything in our society, there are good counselors and not so good counselors. Don't get discouraged about that. If you're sitting in a counseling session and it's not working for you, don't stay there. Let the therapist know, let the counselor know that this isn't working for me. Because I don't know, I think bad counseling might be worse than no counseling. And we make mistakes. I'm a human being.
Back, yeah.
And then if you're thinking about going the therapy route, therapy can be expensive. If you have insurance, that's one thing. If you don't have insurance, most people are not going to ever see a therapist because of that problem. If our beliefs about therapy interfere, the likelihood of finding an African-American male therapist is not that great, somebody you can identify with. It's worth trying, though, and there are African-American therapists out there, but those are obstacles.
Is it better to have, so I had an African-American woman therapist, and I found some benefit to it, but I also felt like I wasn't being held accountable. She was very maternal. Like, it's okay, And I was like, man, I messed up. What do you mean? And I just felt like if I would have been talking to a man, I wouldn't have had that same comfort, support, and I would have been held more accountable. Like, yeah, you messed up. But that was just my, kind of thinking about it. In your experience, is there any benefit to having someone who identifies with you as male or somebody identifies with you via race or class? Like, what are the benefits and detriments to it?
Well, that's one of the toughest things in medicine, to try to match the person up with the right therapy, the right medication, so we don't know, just because you walk into a therapy session, we don't know if you're going to be a responder to therapy, and all those factors play in. So you could get someone that looks like you and not have a good experience, like you're saying, or you could get someone that doesn't look like you and have a good experience. But it really all depends on how you feel about that and what happens when you get together with the person. So in my recovery experience, right? I'm a recovering person. So if I break a fingernail, I want somebody to look at it from the Harvard School of Medicine.
Right, top notch.
Right. Yeah. But when it comes down to me not using a substance, my sponsor is just a regular everyday dude, and he's still able to help me. So it just all depends on the biggest thing to consider when thinking about a therapist is, how well do you like this person? How much do you trust that you can talk to this person? What is your relationship with this person like? They can be any color, but as long as you have that kind of feeling, that relationship, you're going to go farther and do better.
When you step into that therapist's office or just conversation, I guess virtual office, it could be, should you have an intended goal?
Well, not all the time. That can be the reason why you're seeking therapy. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you just because you seek a therapist. You might have some goals that you're not able to get to. You might have some things you want to do, and you might not even be clear on what they are. So we help with all of that. We help you sort of develop that, figure out what you like, try to figure out what you want to do, figure out how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Now, as a therapist, I would like to set some goals with you because we have to figure out, how will we know that you're getting what you need to get from me?
Right. That's my question.
You don't want to sit in therapy and not get anywhere, just like I don't. I got other things to do too. Yeah. And I don't need to take your money like that. I want you to, the best thing you could do for me is improve, right? So we got to have a way of figuring out, what do we want? Like many people are having mental health symptoms because they have not experienced the power process. And what I mean by that is having a goal, putting some energy into it, and acquiring that goal. So the beginning of that can be therapy. So what do you want to accomplish? What's our goal? What do we need to do to get there? And then let's accomplish it. Let's start small, and then we raise incrementally into bigger goals.
You call that a power process, or that's called a power process?
Well, I just call it a power process. That's not my idea.
It's this an academic term.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it makes me think of like when I'm at my best, I wake up in the morning and I'll write out a to-do list.
Yeah.
And that to-do list will include like something that will happen one day, but it's like make $1 million at the very bottom of it. But at the very top, I put wash the dishes, fold the clothes, and then get to the emails. Yeah. And I know if I see myself do the basic stuff at the top, the light lifts, then that motivates me. I kind of get the momentum going.
Yeah. And in situations with people that have severe substance use problems, they've substituted, a good goal for using substances. That takes the place of, that's a surrogate behavior for accomplishing things in your life that you want to accomplish. I'm just going to go get another hit. I'm going to go get some drugs, and that's the goal. That's the energy I put into it, and then I acquire the goal, but I'm not better off. I do the right thing in the wrong place.
Misguided energy, misguided attention.
Yeah, we're seekers.
Yeah,
it's spiritual in nature, but because I'm human, I typically do the right thing in the wrong place.
That makes sense. It's like your moral compass is off just a little bit, slightly, or it could be guided better.
But now, substance use can serve a purpose. It can keep you from killing yourself. It can keep you from killing another person. So it's not all bad. So I don't want to cast it as, only you can tell me if you're having a problem with substances. I can't tell you that.
But there are people living in denial where their whole family will say they have a substance abuse issue, but the person is like, no, I'm good.
Right, and they have the right. The life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They have the right to do that.
What if it's encroaching on my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness?
Then I got to make some decisions about it. Like sometimes people get involved with people with substance use issues.
Yeah.
And it sucks to do that. You don't have to do it, but if you do it, don't try to change them.
You made a decision.
Yeah.
But what about a child growing up in a house with a parent who has substance abuse issues?
Well, we got CPS for that. If it gets out of pocket, the people are going to get involved, and they should.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. Just thinking about the dynamics of it. And as we start to grow and understand substance use more, and it's the opioid epidemic has just opened the floodgates for looking at how people deal with people with substance abuse issues, where it's like we would, growing up, like looking at somebody who was a crack addict, it would be like the butt of a joke. But now we see this is somebody with a disability.
Right. Well, part of that is because it's happening to white folks. When it was happening to black folks.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, where did the paradigm shift happen? You answered my question before I even asked it.
Yeah. It's some other kind of problem until it happens to me.
And how is that impacting your trade?
People call me.
Yeah.
They don't care if they're on fire. That's why, skill building is really important, because if you build skills, you can sell skills to black people. You can sell skills to white people. Just build skills.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Fair enough. A couple of things I wanted to touch on before we get out of here. You mentioned slightly some of the resources that you work with, the organizations. Who are the organizations? How can people tap in with them?
Mostly everybody can be found online. I work with an agency called Cura. It does, the letters don't mean anything. It's just Cura Inc. out of Fremont. They can be found online. That's a drug treatment agency. Mm-hmm. Usually you're going to probably go to Detox at Cherry Hill here in Oakland. And then after that, you're going to get dispatched to one of the treatment facilities around. Cura is a good one. residential treatment, 90-day program.
Cura, Q-U-R-A?
C-U-R-A, Inc., I-N-C. So I work with them. And then I work with the Alameda County Fatherhood Initiative. You can just look them up online, Alameda County Fatherhood Initiative. And what we do is we have a number of different programs. We have an anger management group. We're going to start back up in September. We just finished our series. We have anger management. We have this thing called Cafe Dads. And this is just a group for dads to get together and talk about being fathers and talk about all aspects of parenting, from, how to deal with conflict with your partner, how to hook up a car seat, how to deal with child support and the child welfare office, and just anything having to do with being a father. And we get together 2 times a month and chop it up online because of COVID. Mm. And those are good, where you can feel supported. You can not so isolated. Like one of the things you notice in our society, people with more and more connections via social media are feeling less and less connected to other people. And in these situations where we have these lone shooters, one of the things that they all pretty much have in common is they're isolated. Mm-hmm. They're nursing a grudge. They are angry, armed. Some of them are mentally ill, not all. Some of them have substance use issues, not all. But that one thing that they all have in common is that they're isolated. And so that's one of the things we want to try to reach out and pull men into groups, pull men into relationships. Don't give up on relationships. They're important to us as food and water.
And recognizing that and pouring into healthy relationships. And just on that note, how do you know the difference between an echo chamber of, like, you might think it's supportive, but it's just repeating back the negative thoughts, versus like a benevolent community that's causing growth?
Well, one of the things that I look for personally is diversity. When it comes down to problem solving, you might think that you want to have everybody from Harvard trying to solve the problem, but the problem with that is people that go to Harvard typically are from the same socioeconomic background, so it's almost like they're the same people. Right. So what you really want is some people that went to Harvard and some people that didn't go to Harvard to working on this issue, and I find that diversity trumps individual achievement in a problem-solving group. So the more diverse it is, the more likely you're able to stay away from it just being an echo chamber, because everybody's not going to go along with that. So that's what I work on. In my own recovery, I'm trying to be in diverse groups where I can hear different points of view.
That makes perfect sense. And I mean, as humans, and are lucky enough to be in the Bay Area, we have so many different world perspectives. Yeah. But this society is so isolated, so divided. Yeah, you have to be strategic. You have to put forth the effort to break out of that.
And I have to be careful with how I use social media, because you can confirm anything you believe on social media. And while, like fire is a good thing, it'll cook a steak or warm you up, it'll also burn up your house and kill you. So you just got to be careful with it.
Navigating it. Okay, thank you for that. On the note of kind of philosophies or things for people to chew on as we walk away from this interview, any words of advice for men out there navigating healthy relationships, looking to build healthy relationships with their partner?
Well, the one thing that in order to have a better, more satisfying relationship, I say the one thing to concentrate on is what they call a positive sentiment override. Now that's a scientific word for gratitude. That's all that means. Okay. Be grateful for your partner. Yeah. See, I'm able to use my relationship when my partner is not around because I've associated goodness with her. So when I think about her, I feel better. So what kills men early, I think, is that when we think about our partners, if we don't think positively about them, we're actually poisoning ourselves with endorphins and all these chemicals that are negative, cortisol, and we're getting aroused in a negative way, stressing ourselves just by how we think about our partner. So I had to learn how to associate. My daughter said this to me. She said, "Daddy, men are socialized to not be feminine, not to like women." That's an interesting statement.
In some ways, yes. I mean, to not like certain aspects of women.
Right. So in order for me to be more successful in my relationship, I would need to learn how to like my wife, to really like her. so that I feel good and I'm able to use the relationship when she's not around. And then certain things will roll off my back. It doesn't mean that I don't see when things are wrong or that I can't speak about it, but I've communicated to her that I really do like her. So rapport is like the anesthesia in a relationship. If we have the right rapport, I can say anything to her. She knows that I don't take it personally. I'm not going to leave her or anything like that.
It makes it a lot easier to address surface issues if we know at the underground. I'm not walking out the door.
Any issues.
So, let's just,
Right.
Attitude of gratitude. Y'all heard it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I mean, and then is that also the same for self?
I think so. I think that gratitude is a natural antidepressant. It doesn't mean I don't see the negative, but we have a negative bias. Walking on the plains in Africa or any place else, is that a tan bush over there, or is that a lion? I need to be able to think negatively so that I don't end up being lunch. But I need to do some work, right, in order to feel better about myself and my life. You can get your DNA to the next level without being happy at all. That's not required.
Yeah.
If you want to be happy, you got to work for it. And one of the ways that I would recommend, at least the thing I do is I try to be grateful. And it doesn't mean that I just see the good and don't see the bad. I see both. But I got to really work to see the good.
It's not, what's the term, rose-colored glasses?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah.
I see what's wrong, but I also need to see what's right. And I need to let my partner know what's right. She can't just hear the negative. In fact, there's a ratio. It's 5-to-1. Gottman figured it out in his research up in Washington. That in healthy relationships, there's three kinds of relationships. There's confrontational, there's supportive, and there's avoidant. No one of those relationships is more successful than the other. What was really the important factor was a 5-to-1 ratio. Every time you get in each other's face about something, you got to have 5 other times or more where you're really enjoying each other and having a good time and letting each other know that the party's still jumping.
I need to read that. Gottman?
Yeah, John Gottman. Yeah,
John Gottman.
He's a good guy to follow if you want to do better in relationships.
5-to-1 ratio. Just simplify it for me, man.
Right.
And I understand statistics. I watch sports all day. So
I use that in relapse prevention.
Yeah.
When you start thinking more negative than positive, something bad is going to happen. And it's my job to pump myself up. What do I have going on good?
Again, you're just like, you're saying that I'm on the right path constantly. I walk around the house sometimes on bad days where I just start clapping. To myself, just get some good energy and sound in the room.
Right.
The term, because I'm just thinking attitude of gratitude. What's the term again that you used?
A positive sentiment override.
Positive sentiment override.
Yeah. All it means is gratitude.
Yeah.
Now, when we learn gratitude in recovery, we're always talking about gratitude in recovery. Because the 12-step group is ahead of the science. There's a diverse problem-solving group. The scientists are studying what we've already experienced. And so we're a little bit ahead. It's a way of knowing. So I think 12-step recovery is one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century.
Dang. It makes you think about a lot of society's issues and where we would be if we didn't have such a thing in place.
Oh, yeah. I think we're going to be the last one standing, the people that are in recovery.
Because you done figured it out.
I think so, right? Because it's actually one of the last places that I can think of where there's democracy.
Everybody has a voice.
Yeah, one person, one vote.
You sit in a circle.
Right. And the thing about democracy is that, and even in my marriage, right, in a democracy, you don't get what you want. You get what you can live with.
Compromise.
And that's why people are having a hard time with quote unquote democracy, because they want to get what they want. And it doesn't work like that.
Well, when you're running for office. No. In all honesty, thank you for the time. Thank you for the words. Where can people find you if they're interested to learn more about your work?
Just look up GeraldChambers.com.
GeraldChambers.com.
You'll go right to my website.
Thank you again, man. Like I said, I need this more than the audience would know. Again, you're tuning to a podcast for Pops. This is from Dad's Evoking Change. My name is Pendarvis Harshaw, coming to you from Stay Diff Studios in downtown Oakland, California. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.